I know, the Sens play in about an hour, so this video might not be the most accurate representation of their situation if the Sens have themselves an amazing game against the Devils by the time this video is already uploaded. But today we're going over to the Ottawa Senators and talking about their defense situation. We're going to be talking about players that are already there and some guys they might have their eyes set upon, based off of what Elliotte Friedman said on the recent edition of the 32 Thoughts podcast. No. Not the 32 Thoughts podcast, the Jeff Marek Show, excuse me. That's what it was. Either way, the Ottawa Senators have had themselves a pretty bad season so far, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm kind of disappointed in seeing how far down they are in that Atlantic Division. They've got 8 points in 12 games played. They're looking to change that, by the way, tonight against New Jersey, who is number 1 in the Metro, and they're on a 7-game winning streak. But the Sens have had a pretty bad start to the year. You have guys that are scoring at okay paces. I mean, Giroux and DeBrincat are both sub-point per game players. But when it comes to the quote-unquote disappointments with the team, it doesn't take a genius to take a look at the roster and say, hey man, that defense is kinda sus. Now, there are some pretty good players on that blue line. I would argue that Thomas Chabot is still one of the top young defenders in the entire NHL. You have Jake Sanderson and Jacob Bernard-Docker. These guys came in and, I mean, in an ideal world, you'd like to see them ease the load of a guy like Thomas Chabot, but Chabot is still playing 29 to 30 minutes a game, so there's that. But either way, after you had seen Jacob Bernard-Docker suit up with Thomas Chabot, you saw Nikita Zaitsev get placed onto waivers. There's still Travis Hamonic on this team. Eric Brannstrom, while I do like the guy, I definitely don't think he has been his best, especially in that Vancouver game. There were some pretty bad plays, I would say, that led to some Vancouver goals. But as I had said a few days ago in the post-game review of said Canucks and Senators game, the Canucks played an absolutely terrible hockey showcase. It's just that the Sens had themselves a few defensive lapses that allowed Vancouver to claw back and eventually win. Which is why, when you take a look at the Nikita Zaitsev waiver situation, how he got placed on waivers, and how he's now sent down, this is what Elliotte Friedman said on the recent Jeff Marek Show. With the Sens placing Zaitsev on waivers, they get a little over $1 million in extra cap space. If Zaitsev does get sent down to the AHL, Dorian will have about $4.5 million in cap space. Jeff Marek adds that he would wonder about Winnipeg and Vancouver defenders in that case. The implication here is that if Zaitsev gets sent down and the Sens free up that money, $4.5 million in cap space, then Marek is suggesting that the Sens might be looking towards the Winnipeg Jets and the Vancouver Canucks as potential teams they can make a trade with to get an extra defenseman. Now, I kind of needed to do a little bit of a, oh, hold up, what's going on here type of thing when I saw the Winnipeg Jets be mentioned on this tweet, because the Jets are a pretty good team right now. You go over to the standings, and hey, they're one of the top teams in the entire Central Division. Actually, no, they're tied for first, excuse me. But the thing with Winnipeg is that they have so many defenders on their squad. They're rotating through a whole bunch of them. Logan Stanley is currently injured, but already on the team, you have Morrissey, Pionk, Dillon, Schmidt, Sandberg, DeMello, and you still have Ville Heinola as well. This is a team that kind of has a defenseman or two to spare. And so even though the Jets are the best team in the Central at the moment, there still are some opportunities that can arise where it's like, okay, well, we can improve our situation by adding a little bit more cap flexibility by trading away this guy. The guy will have a better opportunity on the Ottawa Senators, for example, and we could probably still keep the same level of success because we've just been pretty good this season. So whether or not it's a DeMello or a guy like maybe Nate Schmidt, who really knows what exactly the outcome is here on a defense trade involving the Jets and the Senators, but I wanted to focus more so on the Vancouver Canucks, because when it comes to Vancouver, there are only really like 2 defensemen that I could see the team realistically trying to trade, and one if you really narrow it down as to who the Canucks actually could trade. It's Tyler Myers. Oliver Ekman-Larsson is the other guy that I think the team would want to get off their hands, but OEL's contract is so vastly big that there's no reason for any other team to go out there and get it unless there's significant salary retained. Tyler Myers is expiring soon, and he's the only guy that I think is interesting enough, and I say interesting enough because there are a lot of things, both positive and negative, that I can say about Tyler Myers, but Myers is big, he's expiring in 2024, he's not on the books for too long, and he's making $6 million, which is indeed less money than Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Tyler Myers this season has 4 points in 11 games played, and oddly enough, we're talking about the Jets too. Hey, former Jet. So there you go. But Tyler Myers is definitely not a guy that I think is consistent enough to be valued as a bona fide top 4 defenseman. On the Vancouver Canucks, he is a very legit top 4 defenseman because, quite frankly, he is arguably the best right-handed defenseman the team has. Aside from Luke Schenn and Tucker Poolman and all those guys, it's definitely a weak crop of right-handed defensemen on Vancouver, but Tyler Myers, even though he has a few lapses, a few moments where 5'7" Cole Caulfield is shoving him off the puck, which leads to a turnover, and Kirby Dach scores right away, even though Myers gets turnstiled, he becomes a pylon once in a while. He is good enough that when he is out of the lineup and when he's injured, you start to see the Myers apologists on social media start to come out of the ground like Diglett a little bit, and they say things like, hey, you could really see it, man. The Canucks, they're starting to miss Tyler Myers. If Tyler Myers wasn't here, it wouldn't be this bad. And while that might be true, it doesn't mean that Myers is a legitimately good game-changing, game-breaking defenseman, but at the same time, he is better than Travis Hamonic, who is on the Ottawa Senators, and I do think that should the Sens be interested in a guy like Tyler Myers, they could improve their blue line, quote-unquote. At the very least, Myers can log minutes, and you can force him to play a lot. It's just, he's not the guy that I think, if you're really looking for a defenseman to improve your team after Zaitsev got sent down on waivers, you should be looking for. It's just interesting to me that Jeff Marek lays out Vancouver and Winnipeg as the potential trade partners in a defenseman trade to Ottawa because, I mean, hey, if Vancouver is able to snag up a draft pick or two from the Ottawa Senators, a team that's bottom of the league right now, that's a pretty good deal, I would think. And I know there are some memes going around saying, oh, if Tyler Myers gets traded from Vancouver, then all of a sudden the Canucks blue line is better. But realistically, I think the Canucks blue line actually does get a little bit worse because if you have to play Burrows and Stillman a tad more, and you might have to call up Juleson again. I'm sorry, but I trust Myers a tad more than I trust Noah Juleson. Like, I know there might be some Canucks fans that disagree, but that's just kind of how I feel in my heart of hearts. So, if the Canucks can get a little bit worse by trading away Tyler Myers and getting themselves a draft pick, then I would actually really like that. It would signal the start of a rebuild. Okay, maybe not the full-on start, but it would be a prelude sort of move to a type of rebuild thing. If Oliver Ekman-Larsson, though, is the guy, then hey, be my guest, take that guy on for free. Ottawa, go out there and get yourselves another Swedish defenseman that at one point was the captain of a hockey team. That's worked out well for you in the past, right? But either way, talk in the comments your thoughts if you're an Ottawa Senators fan. What do you think about Vancouver Canucks defenseman Tyler Myers and Oliver Ekman-Larsson? If you're talking about the Winnipeg Jets, who amongst these names would you be interested in? There are Neil Pionk's out there, there's Josh Morrissey's out there. Of course, some of these guys are probably not available for trade. I actually have no idea who on the Winnipeg Jets blue line they'd actually be willing to ship out. Obviously, I'm most familiar with Nate Schmidt because that guy was a Vancouver Canuck and now he's succeeding pretty well, actually, with the Winnipeg Jets. But there are a few names here that I do think can make a nice conversation, especially when you acknowledge the quantity of defensemen the Jets have and how they might want to solidify a guy like Logan Stanley or Ville Heinola into their lineup, both of whom are currently not in there. So if you're a Jets fan, if you had to trade away any of your defensemen to free up some space, what exactly is it that you want in return from the Ottawa Senators in some sort of a D-man trade? Do you even think about this idea? Do you say, okay, no, screw it, we can just send somebody down to the AHL and we'll stall on Heinola's development just a tad more because we don't really care about that guy becoming a top 4 D-man? I'm joking. Don't bite my head off, please. Okay, so talk to the comments your thoughts if you're an Ottawa Senators fan about these two teams. If you're a Canucks fan and it's Tyler Myers potentially on the block, you can let me know in the comments what do you think he should be worth. Also, let me know as well if there are any other defensemen that teams could be interested in, specifically the Ottawa Senators. I only really see Myers as the guy because Oliver Ekman-Larsson, that guy's probably not going to be anywhere near trade conversations. Riley Stillman they just got, so I don't think they'd be trading him away anytime soon. They're not touching Hughes, they're probably not touching Schenn. I don't think you have the opportunity to trade a guy like Tucker Poolman, and Jack Rathbone is so young that I don't think he has entered that conversation yet either. But talk to the comments either way all your thoughts about the defenseman trade with the Sens, Canucks, and or the Jets. I hope you enjoyed this video. Juraj, 99. and bye.